The hidden predator Daniel lived on the edge of a small human settlement, far from the busy trade routes of the galaxy. His house was quiet, his land wide and empty, surrounded by tall grass that whispered in the wind. To the neighbors, he was just another farmer, a quiet man who worked hard and kept to himself. But deep inside his barn, Daniel kept a secret that could destroy him if anyone ever found out. Years ago, he had found a strange egg in the forest, cracked and glowing faintly. He had thought it belonged to some rare bird, but when the egg hatched, the creature that came out was no bird at all. It had sharp teeth even as a baby, claws like knives, and glowing yellow eyes. Daniel should have destroyed it, but he could not. Something about the little creature made him feel protective, so he raised it in secret, feeding it, training it, hiding it from the eyes of both humans and aliens. Now the creature was no longer small. It was large, strong, and dangerous, a predator feared across alien worlds. Yet with Daniel, it was calm, loyal, and almost gentle. It obeyed his commands. It trusted him, and sometimes Daniel felt it understood more than he could explain. The aliens who ruled the region hated predators like this. They killed them on sight, saying they were a threat to peace and order. If they discovered Daniel's secret, they would burn his home, exile him, or worse. So Daniel lived each day with careful silence, never letting the predator leave the barn, except at night when the world was dark. One evening, the sound of horns echoed across the settlement. Alien patrols marched into the human lands, their banners high, their weapons shining under the moon. The people gathered nervously, whispering that something had happened. Daniel stood among them, his heart racing. He feared they had discovered him at last. Then he saw her, the alien princess, tall and fierce, wearing silver armor that gleamed like fire. She was not like the soldiers. Her eyes were sharp, proud, and full of command. She looked at the humans as if they were small, unimportant things. But when her gaze swept over Daniel, he felt her stop, as though she sensed something strange. "We hunt a beast," the princess declared, her voice loud and cold. "Livestock have gone missing. Tracks lead near your homes. The creature must be found," the crowd murmured in fear. Daniel's stomach twisted. He knew the missing animals were not killed by his predator, but still, suspicion could easily fall on him. That night, the princess and her guards searched the fields, moving closer and closer to Daniel's land. The torches burned. The footsteps echoed. The sound of alien voices grew louder. Inside the barn, the predator growled softly, sensing danger. Daniel placed a hand on its scaled head, whispering for silence. The creature obeyed, though its glowing eyes shone in the dark. The princess herself walked into Daniel's yard, her boots pressed against the dirt. Her hand rested on the hilt of her blade. She stopped by the barn, staring at it for a long moment. Daniel felt sweat run down his back. If she opened the door, everything would be over. "Human," she said at last, her voice cutting through the silence. "You live alone here, you work alone, yet you are strong. Your land is untouched. Tell me, have you seen anything unusual?" Daniel forced himself to shake his head. "No, princess, only the wind and the night," he answered calmly. For a moment, her piercing eyes studied him, as if she could see the truth behind his words. Then finally, she turned away, ordering her guards to move on. When the torches faded into the distance, Daniel let out the breath he had been holding. The predator rose from the shadows, its body tense, its jaws wide with quiet anger. Daniel stroked its back to calm it, whispering again and again that they were safe. But in his heart, he knew this was only the beginning. The princess had looked at him too closely. She had felt something she could not explain, and Daniel feared that the secret he had kept for years would soon be dragged into the light. The princess's suspicion. The morning after the search, Daniel worked in his field as if nothing had happened. He cut the tall grass with steady strokes, his face calm but his mind heavy with fear. Inside the barn, the predator rested quietly, though its golden eyes never truly slept. It was always aware, always alert, always ready. The alien patrols had left the settlement, but not all of them. Some still walked the roads, watching the humans with sharp eyes, and at their head was the princess, her silver armor shining in the sun. She moved through the village like a storm, her presence turning whispers into silence. The humans respected her but also feared her. They knew she held power, the power to decide life or death. Yet the princess seemed unsettled, as if her heart carried a question she could not answer. The memory of Daniel's face had stayed in her mind, the way he had stood tall when others bowed, the way he had spoken with calmness when others trembled. She returned to her guards that evening and gave an order. "Watch the human farmer," she said firmly. "There is something he hides." The soldiers obeyed without question, for no one doubted the instinct of their princess. That night Daniel felt the danger again. From his window he saw shadows moving in the distance, alien soldiers watching, waiting, searching for something they could not yet see. Daniel clenched his fists, his heart pounding in his chest. The predator inside the barn growled. A low rumble that shook the wooden beams. Daniel whispered softly, "Quiet, my friend, they cannot see you, not yet." The creature tilted its head, as if it understood, then lowered itself back into the shadows. It trusted Daniel, and Daniel trusted it. But trust alone could not protect them from suspicion. The next day the princess came again. This time she did not stand at a distance. She walked straight to Daniel's land, her silver cloak flowing behind her, her eyes sharp as blades. Daniel met her at the gate, his hands rough from work, his clothes simple, his voice steady. "Princess," he said with respect, "you honor my land." She did not answer his greeting at first. Her eyes moved over the house, the barn, the fields. Everything looked ordinary, too ordinary. Finally she spoke. "Human, you say you are a farmer, but your land shows no weakness. Your fields are full, your walls strong, your spirit calm, and yet, I feel something here." Her words pierced the air like arrows. Daniel forced a small smile. "Peace comes from hard work, princess, not from secrets," he said slowly. The princess stepped closer, her gaze locking on his. "Perhaps," she said softly, "but I will not rest until I know the truth." That night the tension grew heavier. Daniel could not sleep. He sat in the barn beside the predator, his hand resting on its rough scales. The creature lay still, but its eyes glowed in the dark, a reminder of the danger they both faced. Outside, footsteps crunched against the earth. Daniel froze. Through the cracks in the barn wall he saw the silver glint of armor. The princess had returned with only 2 guards, moving quietly, searching in secret. She was testing him, testing the truth of his words. Daniel held the predator. Back with a firm hand as it rose, he whispered gently, "Not yet, stay hidden." The predator growled but obeyed, pressing its powerful body against the shadows. The barn door creaked as the princess pressed her hand against it. For one long moment Daniel thought she would enter. His muscles tightened, ready to defend his secret with everything he had. But then she stopped, her hand falling back to her side. She turned and walked away, her cloak trailing like a wave of silver. Daniel exhaled slowly, his breath shaking. The predator lowered its head, calm once more. But Daniel knew the truth in his heart. The princess was not leaving out of trust. She was leaving because she was certain something waited inside. She would return, and next time she would not hesitate. Far from the barn, the princess stood, on a hill, her eyes reflecting the light of the stars. Her thoughts burned with questions. Why did the human's words unsettle her? Why did his calmness feel like defiance? And why did her instincts tell her that something powerful lived under his roof? For the first time, the proud princess felt a touch of doubt. She had faced warriors, beasts, and storms, but this human made her uncertain. She whispered into the wind, "Of farmer, whatever you hide, I will uncover it, even if it breaks your world." Predator. Unleashed days passed, but the air around Daniel's land did not grow lighter. Instead, the tension thickened like a storm waiting to break. The princess's patrol stayed close, circling the village, their silver armor flashing under the sun. Daniel worked his fields with calm hands, but inside he carried a heavy stone of fear. The predator remained hidden in the barn, restless and alert. It sensed the danger pressing closer, its golden eyes burning in the dark. Sometimes, at night it paced in circles, claws scratching the wooden floor. Daniel soothed it with whispers, soft words like he had done since the day it hatched, but even his voice could not keep it calm forever. Then one evening, the danger came. A roar shook the hills, echoing through the human settlement. It was not Daniel's predator, but something wild, something far larger. The villagers screamed as shadows moved across the fields. Livestock were torn apart, fences broken, and flames lit the night sky. Alien soldiers rushed to fight, their weapons glowing. The princess herself led them, her silver cloak flying behind her as she struck with her blade. But the beast was too strong, a monstrous predator from the forests. It crushed 2 soldiers under its claws and hurled another into the air. The humans fled, the soldiers bled, and the princess's eyes blazed with fury as she stood her ground. Daniel heard the chaos from his land. The predator in his barn roared. In answer, shaking the walls, Daniel knew this was the worst danger. If his creature broke free, the world would see the truth. But if he held it back, the village and maybe the princess herself would be destroyed. The barn door rattled as the predator threw its weight against it. Daniel pressed his hands against the wood, shouting, Stay with me." The predator stopped for a heartbeat. Its glowing eyes locked on his. Then another scream rang out from the fields, high and sharp, the cry of the princess as the wild beast knocked her to the ground. Daniel's choice was made in that instant. He opened the door, and his predator burst into the night, a shadow of claws and teeth. The villagers saw it and gasped, terror flooding their voices. 2 predators, they thought. 2 monsters had come to end them, but Daniel's predator did not attack the humans. It charged straight toward the wild beast, roaring a challenge that shook the ground. The 2 predators collided, claws tearing, teeth snapping, their bodies rolling across the burning field. Sparks flew as alien weapons struck, trying to hit the monsters without harming their own. The princess rose to her feet, stunned. She saw Daniel's predator stand over her, its golden eyes fixed on her for a breath. She expected death, but instead the creature turned away, leaping back at its rival. The princess froze, shock breaking through her pride. This predator was not wild. It was fighting to protect Daniel. Ran through the chaos, shouting for people to stay back. "Do not strike, it is with me," he cried. But his words were lost in the storm of roars and screams. The fight raged, blood splattering the ground. Daniel's predator was smaller but faster, striking with precision, moving like a shadow guided by purpose. The wild beast lunged, its jaws snapping shut on empty air as Daniel's predator twisted away. Then, with a roar that split the night, Daniel's predator sank its claws into the beast's throat, holding tight as the larger creature thrashed. The ground shook until finally the wild beast collapsed, its body broken. Silence spread across the battlefield, broken only by the crackle of burning fences. Daniel's predator stood tall, chest heaving, its golden eyes glowing in the firelight. It turned and walked back toward Daniel, lowering its head at his feet like a loyal hound returning from a hunt. The villagers stared in shock, whispers rising like wind. The alien soldiers raised their weapons, unsure if they should strike. And the princess, her silver blade still in her hand, stared at Daniel with eyes full of fire and confusion. "You," she breathed, stepping closer, her voice trembling between anger and wonder. "This creature, it obeys you. It protects you. It protects us." Daniel said nothing at first, his hand resting on the predator's scaled head. He looked into the princess's sharp eyes and saw her world breaking and reshaping in that moment. Finally, he spoke. His voice, calm though his heart thundered, "It is no monster, princess, it is mine." The princess's guards shifted nervously, their blades ready, but none dared move. They looked to her, waiting for her command. But the princess only stared at Daniel, her lips pressed tight, her mind caught between duty and disbelief. The villagers whispered louder, some calling Daniel blessed, others calling him cursed. The predator stood silently at his side, blood dripping from its claws, yet calm as stone. In that fiery night, the secret Daniel had guarded for years was no longer hidden. The predator was unleashed. And nothing would ever be the same again. Asterisk forced encounter. The night after the battle, the village did not sleep. Fires were put out, fences rebuilt, bodies of soldiers carried away under the pale light of the moons. But the whispers were louder than the work. Everyone spoke of the predator that obeyed a human. Some whispered that Daniel was cursed, others that he was blessed. No one could agree except on one thing: he was no ordinary man anymore. Daniel stayed by his predator's side. The creature rested outside the barn, blood drying on its claws, but its head lowered calmly as if waiting for his word. He stroked its scaled back, speaking soft words to soothe it. Yet inside, he knew the truth. There was no more hiding. His secret had burst into the open, and now the world would come for him. The princess did not return to her camp. Instead, she remained close, watching Daniel from the shadows of her guards. Her silver armor caught the faint glow of the fire as she stood unmoving, her eyes sharp and unblinking. She could not ignore what she had seen. The predator had fought like a weapon, but it had spared her life. It had looked at her, recognized her, then turned away. That was not instinct. That was control. At dawn, she walked onto Daniel's land without fear. Her cloak swept across the grass as her guards followed at a distance. Daniel rose from where he sat, his predator lifting its head with a soft growl. The princess stopped before them, her hand on her sword but her face calm. "Human," she said, her voice steady as stone. "You will tell me the truth." Her words were not a question, they were a command. Daniel looked at her, his eyes tired but firm. "You saw the truth with your own eyes. Princess, it is loyal to me. It will not harm you unless I ask it." The predator lowered its head as if to prove his words, golden eyes glowing softly in the morning light. The princess studied the creature, her brows furrowed. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then she stepped forward, her hand slowly lifting. Her fingers hovered inches above the predator's scaled head. Daniel tensed, ready to stop her if it reacted. But when her hand touched the creature, it snapped its jaws, not at her but at the air beside her wrist. The sound of teeth clashing, like iron, made her guards cry out, their blades half raised. The princess did not flinch. She stood tall, her eyes locked on the predator's. It growled low, refusing her touch. Only when Daniel placed his hand on its back did it calm again. Leaning into him like a loyal beast, the princess's lips tightened. "It rejects me," she said coldly. "But it bows to you." She looked at Daniel with something new in her eyes. Not only suspicion, but also curiosity. "How, human? How did you bind it?" Daniel shook his head. "I did not bind it. I raised it. I cared for it. I treated it not as a monster, but as a friend." The predator rumbled low, as if agreeing with his words. The princess's expression hardened, but her voice dropped lower. "In my world, such creatures are weapons, deadly and untamable. Many princes have died trying to control them, yet here it kneels before you, a farmer." She stepped closer until she stood only a breath away from him, her voice sharpened. "You hold power that even my people cannot master, and I will not ignore it." Daniel met her gaze, steady but wary. "I do not seek power, princess. I only seek peace." But the princess shook her head, her silver hair brushing against her armor. "Peace is an illusion, human. Power decides who survives, and now you stand at the center of it." The predator rose to its full height, towering over both of them. The morning light caught its scales, making it glow like molten gold. The princess stared up at it, her fists clenched at her sides. For the first time in her life, she felt not only challenged but humbled. This beast should have been hers by right of her blood, but it chose another. The forced encounter left no more room for shadows. The princess turned sharply, calling her guards. They moved forward, blades half-drawn, their eyes locked on the predator. Daniel raised his hand quickly, standing before them. "No," he said firmly. "Strike it, and you will strike me." The predator growled, its claws digging into the earth. The guards froze, unsure. The princess raised her hand, stopping them. Her eyes narrowed at Daniel. "You dare to stand between me and my soldiers?" she asked, her voice sharp as steel. "I dare because it is mine," Daniel answered, his voice calm but carrying strength. The predator lowered its head again, pressing its body close to him, It was clear to all. This was no wild beast, this was loyalty. The princess's anger did not fade, but something else burned beneath it. Respect, reluctant, but growing. She turned away, her cloak sweeping behind her. "Very well, human," she said, her voice like fire in the wind. "Keep your secret no longer, for now I will let you live, but you belong to my eyes, and I will test the bond you claim." Her words struck Daniel like cold iron. He knew the truth. There would be no turning back. The princess had seen too much, felt too much, and now their paths were bound together. As the sun rose higher, Daniel stood in the field with his predator at his side. The land around him felt smaller, the world beyond felt closer, and in the distance the princess's silver armor glimmered like a promise of battles yet to come. The challenge of power. The days after the battle and the encounter with the princess were uneasy. The village tried to return to normal, but normal no longer existed. Children whispered of the golden-eyed predator. Men argued whether Daniel had cursed them or saved them. Women prayed to whatever gods would listen. And through it all, the princess stayed close, her silver camp rising on the edge of human land, her soldiers never far from sight. Daniel worked his fields as he always had, but every movement was watched. The predator hunted at night, bringing back food. Yet Daniel warned it to stay close. The creature obeyed. But Daniel saw the hunger in its eyes, the hunger for freedom, for the wild fight. Still, it listened to him always, as if his voice was stronger than instinct. One morning the princess arrived again. She rode a beast of her own, armored and proud, her cloak trailing like a storm. Her guards followed, their spears gleaming, their faces hard. Daniel stood in his field, wiping the sweat from his brow. The predator crouched silently at his side. The princess dismounted, her eyes locked on the predator. "I have thought much," she said, her voice low but sharp. "You claim it is yours. Yet how can that be? When no alien warrior, no prince, no general has ever tamed one, how can a human farmer hold what even kings have failed to hold?" Daniel said nothing at first. He placed his hand on the predator's scaled head, calm and steady. "It is not mine because I tamed it, princess," he said. "It is mine because I raised it." The predator rumbled softly, pressing against his side like a loyal hound. The princess's eyes narrowed. She stepped forward, standing tall before him. "Then prove it," she said suddenly, her voice like a blade drawn in the sun. "Prove it by letting me command it." The soldiers behind her murmured in shock, but she silenced them with a gesture. Her pride burned in her chest. She could not bear to see a human hold power where she did not. If the beast truly listened, then it would obey her. Daniel shook his head slowly. "You will fail, princess. It knows you do not see it as I do. It will not bow." The princess's lips pressed tight. "Then let it be seen if it refuses me. Then I will know the truth with my own eyes." Daniel hesitated, then stepped back. The predator rose to its full height, golden eyes blazing, muscles tense as it watched the alien princess. She raised her hand, her voice ringing with command. "Kneel, beast," she ordered. But the predator only growled, low and steady, its eyes glowing brighter. She stepped closer, her voice louder. "Kneel," she repeated, her tone like thunder. The predator's growl deepened, its claws dug into the dirt. It did not move, it did not bow, it only bared its teeth. The soldiers lifted their weapons, fear and anger flashing in their eyes. Daniel raised his hand sharply. "Do not strike," he commanded, his voice cutting through the tension. The predator turned its head at once toward him, the growl fading as it lowered itself back into the earth, calm again under his gaze. The princess froze, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Her silver eyes locked on the beast, then on Daniel. She had given the same command her generals gave, the same command her ancestors had given, and the creature had ignored her, yet it obeyed the human with a single word. The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, the princess spoke, her voice sharp with frustration but edged with something else. "It will not obey me," she admitted. "It chooses you." Daniel nodded quietly. "It is not about choice, Princess. It is about trust," he said softly. "From the day it was born, it knew my hand, my voice, my care. You see a weapon, but I see a friend." The princess's eyes narrowed again. She turned sharply, her cloak snapping in the wind. Her pride had been wounded, yet her curiosity burned hotter than her anger. She whispered to herself, words too low for her soldiers to hear. If such loyalty can be given to him, what else might be taken by humans? The soldiers followed her as she left, but her gaze flickered back once more at Daniel. She hated the thought, but she could not escape it. His power was real, and power demanded to be tested again and again until one side broke. That night, Daniel sat by the predator's side in the barn. The creature's breath was steady, its golden eyes dim with sleep. But Daniel's mind was restless. He knew the princess would not stop. Her pride would not allow it, and sooner or later, her challenge would turn into something far more dangerous. He whispered into the dark, his hand resting on the predator's head. "We are no longer hidden, my friend. The world sees us now, and the princess will not rest until she bends or breaks." Outside under the stars, the princess stood at the edge of her camp, her hand pressed against her sword, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She felt anger at her failure, yet deep inside she also felt something strange, respect and fear. A human farmer had shown her what no alien prince could, and that truth burned brighter than the fire of her pride. Submission of the princess. The night sky was restless, heavy, clouds moving across the moons. Daniel sat outside his barn, the predator lying close at his feet, its golden eyes watching the dark horizon. He could feel the weight of every stare from the alien soldiers in the princess's camp. They no longer searched his land openly, but their presence was a shadow that never left. The princess had not spoken to him since the failed command, yet Daniel knew she was thinking, watching, waiting for the next chance to test him. Her pride was too strong to let the matter end, but fate moved before her pride could act. At dawn, a horn split the air, long and deep. Daniel looked up to see soldiers, rushing, their banners torn, their faces pale with fear. Something had come down from the forest hills, something larger than the beast that had attacked before. The earth trembled under its steps, trees shattered as if made of glass. The humans screamed and fled. Even the alien soldiers backed away, fear breaking their discipline. And then Daniel saw it. A predator unlike any other, massive, armored with thick scales, its head crowned with spines, its roar shaking the sky. The princess rode forward, her silver blade drawn, her cloak whipping in the wind. She shouted commands, her voice sharp. Her soldiers tried to form lines, but when the creature charged, their courage broke. It tore through their ranks like paper, sending bodies flying. The princess fought bravely, her blade flashing against the monster's claws, but she was only one against a storm. The beast struck her mount, throwing her hard to the ground, her blade falling from her hand. For the first time, she tasted the fear of death. Daniel's predator rose with a roar, its body tense. Daniel did not even need to speak. The creature surged forward, its golden eyes blazing. The villagers who had doubted him cried out in awe as they saw it clash with the giant beast. The earth shook as the two predators fought, claws against claws, teeth against teeth. Blood sprayed, dust rose, the sound of roars filled the sky. Daniel ran toward the fallen princess. She lay on the ground, her silver armor cracked, her breath heavy. Her eyes widened as she saw him standing over her, his hand reaching to help. For a heartbeat, her pride made her want to refuse, but the shadow of the monstrous predator falling closer broke her defiance. She took his hand, and he pulled her up, steady and firm. Together they stumbled back as Daniel's predator hurled itself against the giant beast again. The princess could not look away. The creature she had called a weapon, a monster, was fighting not for itself, but for him, and now for her. It bled for them, its roars carrying not rage but loyalty. The battle was brutal, each strike shaking. The fields, Daniel's predator was smaller, faster, clever. It leapt onto the giant beast's back, Tearing at its spines, the larger predator howled, slamming itself into the ground to crush its foe. The villagers screamed, soldiers shouted, dust rose in a storm. When the dust cleared, Daniel's predator stood, bloodied but unbroken. The massive beast lay still, its chest split, its body unmoving. A silence fell across the field, heavy and endless. The princess leaned on Daniel's arm, her chest heaving, her silver eyes locked on the predator, then on the man beside her. Her lips trembled, not from weakness, but from the shattering of everything she thought she knew. This human, this farmer, had done what no alien lord could do. He had raised loyalty where others had found only death. She sank to her knees, not from injury but from realization. Her voice was low, almost broken. I am a princess of the crown, yet I owe my life to you, human, and to the beast that bows only to you. She lowered her head, silver hair falling across her face. For the first time, I submit. The soldiers who had survived looked on in shock. Never had they seen their princess bow to anyone, let alone. A human farmer whispers spread like fire. Some called it shame, others called it fate. Daniel said nothing. He stood steady, his predator at his side, its golden eyes glowing even in exhaustion. The moment stretched, powerful and unshakable. The princess's pride was broken, but in its place something new was born. Respect, and the first spark of a bond she could not deny. When she rose again, her eyes burned, not with anger, but with resolve. She looked at Daniel as an equal, perhaps more than that. This bond of yours, she said slowly, is not only power, it is a lesson, perhaps even a future. Daniel met her gaze, silent but firm. He did not seek submission, but it had come, not through force, but through trust. And he knew in his heart that this was only the beginning. The empire would not ignore what had happened here, and neither would its princess. The rise of human influence. The field was quiet after the battle. Smoke curled from broken fences, and the air carried the heavy scent of blood. The villagers stood frozen, their eyes fixed on Daniel and the predator that stood at his side. And before him knelt the alien princess, her silver armor cracked, her pride shattered, yet her spirit burning with something new. Word spread quickly, faster than fire on dry grass. By nightfall, every corner of the village whispered the same. Kruth. A human had saved the alien princess, not with armies, not with weapons, but with a predator that obeyed his voice alone. It was no longer a secret. This bond was a power greater than anyone had seen. The alien soldiers stood in silence, their loyalty to the princess battling their fear of the predator. When she rose again, her eyes were no longer cold with scorn. She looked at Daniel not as a farmer, not even as a subject, but as someone who now held power equal to her own. She lifted her hand, and her soldiers lowered their blades. No one will strike him, she ordered firmly, her voice carrying, across the field. He is under my protection. The villagers gasped, the soldiers bowed, and Daniel stood still, unsure what path was being built under his feet. The princess stepped closer, her silver eyes locked on his. Human, your secret has become greater than you, greater than me. It belongs to history now, she said softly. You hold a key that my empire has sought for centuries, the loyalty of what cannot be tamed. Daniel shook his head, his hand resting gently on the predator's scaled neck. I did not raise it for power, princess. I raised it because it was alone, because I could not destroy it, because I saw life when others saw danger. The predator rumbled low, pressing against him like it understood. The princess's lips curved, not into a smile, but into something thoughtful. That is why it chose you, she said, her voice quieter now. Alien saw a weapon, human saw a friend. Perhaps that is the difference that frightens us most. The following days changed everything. Messengers ran to nearby towns, carrying news of the princess's submission. Human and alien alike gathered to see Daniel and the predator, some in awe, some in fear. But no one could deny the truth. Something had shifted in the balance of power. The princess did not hide her actions. She stood before her people and spoke clearly, her voice echoing. This man saved me. This predator obeys him, and I will not deny his strength. Her words shook her own soldiers, but they could not argue with what they had seen. For the first time, humans were not spoken of as weak, not laughed at as prey. They were seen as something new, something dangerous, something to be respected. And Daniel, though he never asked for it, became the symbol of this change. In private, the princess met with him often. At first their words were sharp, her pride clashing with his stubborn calm. But slowly something grew between them, a fragile respect, born from fire and blood. She began to ask him questions, not just about the predator, but about humans, about their ways, about why he had chosen kindness over cruelty, and Daniel answered simply, because kindness builds trust, and trust builds loyalty stronger than fear ever can. The predator remained always by his side, its golden eyes watching, its body a living shadow of his will. To the humans it was a guardian, to the aliens it was a riddle they could not solve. But to Daniel, it was still the same creature he had raised from a glowing egg, his friend, his family. One evening, as the suns dipped below the horizon, the princess stood with him on the edge of his fields. Her silver cloak caught the wind, her gaze fixed on the predator resting nearby. My empire will not ignore this, Daniel, she said softly. They will come not only to see but to take. They will want your secret for themselves. Daniel nodded slowly, his eyes on the darkening sky. Then let them come, he said, his voice calm but strong. I will not give them a weapon, but I will show them what loyalty means, and if they cannot see it, then they will learn to fear it. The princess turned her eyes to him, and for the first time she allowed a small smile to touch her lips. Perhaps humanity is not so small after all, she whispered. Perhaps it is time the galaxy learned. The night fell, but the village no longer felt like a forgotten place. It felt like the center of something vast, something unstoppable. The predator lay close, its golden eyes glowing. In the dark like stars, the princess stood beside Daniel, her pride reshaped into respect, her power now tied to his. And Daniel, the simple farmer who had raised a predator in secret, realized the truth at last. The galaxy would never be the same. A new chapter had begun, and it began not with a king, not with a general, not with an emperor, but with a human, a predator, and a princess who had been forced to submit.